In a small town near Valencia lived a family that acquaintances often spoke about with a hint of envy. The relationship between the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law seemed almost exemplary, something many considered a rare miracle. The mother-in-law's name was Maria Esteban. She was around 60 years old and, by nature, gentle, caring, and completely uninterested in interfering in other people's lives. She did not try to run her son's family, did not give unsolicited advice, did not compete for her grandson's attention, and never caused scenes out of jealousy. On the contrary, she sincerely rejoiced that her son had married a calm and kind woman and gladly helped the young family whenever she could. The daughter-in-law, Clara, repaid Maria in kind. If her mother-in-law needed to visit a doctor, run errands, or simply leave town for a couple of days to stay with a friend, Clara would look after her house without hesitation, feed the cat, water the plants, and always prepare something tasty for her return. Maria never hid how lucky she felt and often proudly told her neighbors that her daughter-in-law was pure gold. Clara's husband, Alejandro, was also pleased. His friends constantly complained about endless conflicts between their wives and mothers, while in his home, everything was calm and predictable. This went on for almost 2 years, until Maria's older sister, Rosario, began to interfere regularly in their peaceful life. Rosario lived in another city and did not visit often, but every one of her visits became a real trial for the entire family. She was a harsh, categorical woman, absolutely convinced that her view of life was the only correct one. She had never been married and had no children, yet this did not prevent her from speaking about family, marriage, and child-rearing with the confidence of an unquestionable authority. The most unpleasant part was how Maria changed whenever her sister was around. While Rosario was hundreds of kilometers away, the mother-in-law remained herself, kind, reasonable, and calm. But as soon as her sister crossed the threshold of her home, Maria seemed to start seeing the world through someone else's eyes, repeating other people's words and suddenly finding faults where none had existed before. One day, Clara needed to step out for a short time. She had a previously scheduled appointment with a cosmetologist. She rarely asked her mother-in-law to watch the child and only did so when it was truly necessary. That day she knew Rosario was staying with Maria, but it was too late to cancel the appointment. Clara brought her son to his grandmother's house and felt the tension from the very first moment. Rosario immediately began commenting on the child's appearance. The jacket was wrong for the weather, the hat too thin, and the colors unsuitable for a boy. Maria, who had never made such remarks before, suddenly started nodding along and adding that perhaps her sister was right. When it became clear that Clara was planning to leave for her appointment, Rosario flared up. She loudly declared that a decent mother would never leave her child for such trivial things, that a woman should think about her family first and not about herself. At that moment, Maria unexpectedly supported her sister and refused to stay with her grandson, referring to principles of upbringing. For Clara, this was a real shock. She did not argue. She silently called a friend who agreed to help and left, maintaining outward calm while everything boiled inside. From that day on, the relationship began to deteriorate. Every visit from Rosario came with new reproaches. Clara ran the household incorrectly, raised her son the wrong way, behaved too freely with her husband, and showed insufficient respect for her elders. Each time, Maria echoed her sister, adding comments she never would have made before. After Rosario left, the mother-in-law quickly returned to her former self as if nothing had happened, but the bitter aftertaste never disappeared. Alejandro advised his wife to ignore it, insisting that his aunt's visits were rare and brief, and that conflicts would only make things worse. But Clara felt that each time it became harder for her to pretend nothing was happening. What hurt her most was not Rosario's opinion, but how easily Maria abandoned her own views in exchange for her sister's approval. During one of Rosario's later visits, the tension reached its breaking point. Rosario once again began lecturing everyone on what an ideal family should look like. And then Clara, for the first time, calmly and politely, yet firmly, asked where one could see the results of such flawless life experience. The husband, children, grandchildren, and the happy family others were expected to emulate. Silence filled the room. Rosario was taken aback, and Maria lowered her eyes. Clara did not raise her voice or cause a scene. She simply made it clear that she would no longer silently endure other people's lectures. After that visit, Rosario began coming much less frequently, and Maria, left without her sister's constant pressure, gradually returned to her former self. But for Clara, the experience became an important lesson. Even the warmest relationships can crack if someone else's will intrudes into them too often.